Hope all of you had your lunch. So you can be a bit louder. Good afternoon. Yeah, that sounds good. So we are very happy to have you all. I know you are of a. We are so fortunate to have the guest from American Consulate Hyderabad, Sean, and our university top administration, and served this university on the top rank for the register for a long time. Professor H. Purushottam garu, IPR chair, and we are so happy to have the remaining dignitaries. May I request all of you to please come on to the dais and grace the platform. Yeah. Thank you very much, and we have a discussion on US-India tech collaboration, and in fact, apologies from our Honorable Vice Chancellor. He is supposed to be here by this time, but due to some inevitable reason, he could not make it. But we are so happy that we have a senior professor in Commerce and Management, Professor V. Krishna Mohan garu, and Purushottam garu with us, and we will start the program with the opening remarks of Professor Krishna Mohan garu, followed by the speech from the guest of this day, Mr. Sean Ruthe. That's how we pronounce. We'll learn a little later. Close enough, okay. Is the Political and Economic Chief, U.S. Consulate General, Hyderabad. So we always find difficulty in pronunciation some of the names, but we are so happy that he could make it today, and hopefully will be benefited. Later after the speech, we'll have a wonderful discussion. Whole program will be closed within an hour, and we have another important program followed by this, and we have Professor H. Purushottam garu. He is the moderator he will be moderating the discussion session. I invite Professor Krishna Mohan garu.
Seen Ruth. Not Sean. Seen. Sean. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Stephen, for the given opportunity. We know the purpose why we are meeting now is to have a discussion on US-India tech collaboration with the speaker of the day, Sean Ruthe, and a moderator, Professor Purushottam, and a facilitator, Professor James Stephen. And ever since American Corner is established here, it has been happening on campus, many programs, and such programs are highly informative and also inspiring to students, researchers, and faculty. And I am so glad to be here to give few opening remarks. Needless to mention about Andhra University, because Ruth is already familiar with the university and its administration, the students, American Corner. So, university needs no introduction. As all of you know, this is a 97-year-old university, close to centenary celebrations. And present administration strongly believe collaborate to conquer the world market in education. Unless we collaborate, unless we exchange our learning experience, we are not able to survive in today's highly competitive, globalized environment of the day. In order to meet competition on one side, make universities as real social entities. How it can be made social entities? Unless we are very open-minded, unless we invite expertise in any form from any part of the world, unless we collaborate with the best technologies, best practices found anywhere with any institution. In that spirit and in that perspective, hopefully US India tech collaboration presentation is going to make us to understand how technology collaboration is going to become advantage to each of the country, both technology transferring country, technology receiving country. Both are equally benefited, and such programs are always meant for mutually beneficial propositions. In that direction, all of you know that America is an advanced society on technology front. Always from Indian side, we view America as a high-tech society. So any new technology that comes into existence through innovation is first practically tested, implemented in such advanced countries like US. So with the learning experience, with that learning curve in our backdrop, when we take technology, along with the technology, what is market acceptance? How people are responding to technological advancements? What are the implications? I think these are the dimensions which are to be examined before we go for any collaboration. And always collaborations, when we view from the positive side, benefit is going to be there. Not only technology receiving country, the technology transferring country, because technology is invented not free of cost. Technology is invented with huge investment in R&D. And unless they collaborate, unless they transfer such technology to many countries, unless they diffuse new product, new innovations into many countries, the technology developmental cost can never be recovered. As all of you know, this is precisely the reason why collaborations are encouraged today all over the world. It is through collaborative efforts that each economy is going to grow, each economy is going to upgrade in its quality of life delivered in a society depends on how good you are in diffusing such technology drawn from the best countries from all over the world. That could be the reason why any technology transfer that happens only through education institution is going to build both R&D as well as transferring such R&D into commercialization. So in that perspective, today's discussion is going to be very fruitful. I don't want to take much of your time. May I request Sri San Ruthe, right? Yes, sir. To give his presentation and moderated by able IPR Chair Professor Purushottam. And I am always there. Definitely in case if need arises, I will intervene and also supplement his presentation. Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming all over from Hyderabad to this place and also interacting with our students and staff as well as researchers, right? This will go a long way in building good research ecosystem on the campus, in building our student fully equipped with the current knowledge, and technologically, unless we progress well, the economic progress is not possible, social progress is not possible, is the context in which we are all going to participate in this meeting. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Professor Krishnamohan. Big round of applause. He is the professor in the Department of Management and Commerce. If I leave the mic, he can go up to late night. Right? So thank you so much. I acknowledge the presence of...
Only 15 minutes ahead of this meeting.
Yes. We are fortunate in a way. So I acknowledge the presence of senior professors here. To San Ruthe. I acknowledge the presence of Professor Sobasri Madam, Senior Professor, Principal IISc and former Executive Council member. I also acknowledge the presence of Honorable Executive Council member, Krishna Manjari Ma'am, and Professor Mallikarjun Garu is a scientist in the campus and head of the electrical department, and we are so happy. We are also fortunate to have Rao Garu from steel plant, former general manager, and we have Professor Paranji ma'am and sorry I could not recollect the other names, Dr. Varalakshmi Garu and other dignitaries and all the scholars. Thank you so much for your presence, and sorry I could not mention your names. We are so happy to have you too. Subha and Shiva and Shiva and Srimali. Big round of applause. They could spend their time and to be with us. We are so happy to have you all. So we'll have the business session now. We are entering into the peak time. We welcome you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Stephen, and thank you for your excellent stewardship of our American corner here. We're very proud of our affiliation with Andhra University, and the American corner here is a visible symbol of Consul General Jennifer Larson's commitment to Andhra as far as programming from our side. So that said, I'd like to thank Professor Krishna Mohan Garu, Professor Stephen Garu, who I already mentioned, and Professor Purushottam Garu. Thank you, gentlemen, for facilitating. And I'd also like to, like they did, acknowledge my staff here with me, Siba Tripathi and Srimali Kari, who are here on the front row. Maybe you could stand up and say hello. So if the students want to connect later, this is who you can connect to them anytime. They're available. You can call them at midnight, no problem, anytime. They'll give you their card. So we've been asked to come today to very briefly share about this tech partnership. And I'm actually very excited because right now, even as recently as less than 1 month ago, our governments, the central government of India, New Delhi, and my government in Washington, who we represent here in Hyderabad, have come to an agreement on a very exciting new initiative called the Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technologies. So this is really a broad scope. So what I'd like to do this afternoon with all of you is very briefly go through what this new initiative encompasses. And so for short, we call it ICET. That refers to Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technologies. And so before I start, if I may, I'd like to just get a show of hands. I know we've got a mixed audience today. How many of you we have faculty, researchers, also students, right? How many of you are students? If you could raise your hand, just students, yeah. And what about researchers? Yeah, okay, so some are both, right? Anyway, I think actually the content of this new initiative will be directly relevant to many of you, whether you're in the STEM fields or not. This initiative really could impact the lives of many of our students in the United States and in India going forward. So I won't go through the history of the United States-India bilateral relationship, but I think it is worth pointing out that we are at a point today that we never have been in the relationship between our two countries in terms of willingness to engage on import issues of global import like critical and emerging technologies. So just recently, actually on January 31st in Washington, the National Security Advisor of India met with the National Security Advisor of the United States, along with a whole slew of other officials to launch this Critical and Emerging Technologies Initiative. So that collaboration includes a number of things, and really in 4 key areas. 1, strengthening our innovation ecosystem. 2, defense, innovation, and technology cooperation. 3, resilient semiconductor supply chains. And 4, next-generation telecommunications. And there are another number of subcategories that are not covered by those 4 main categories, but those 4 are largely the thrust, in addition to very exciting areas like commercial space development. There's actually an Indian company, a startup called Skyroot, that recently launched the first indigenously designed and built a 3D printer in Hyderabad at the state government's T-Works facility. So anyway, before getting into the meat of what this ICET is, I also just want to point out, Telugu India, which is obviously where we are now, Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, is incredibly central to all that is happening in the critical and emerging technologies partnership space between the United States and India. So we in Hyderabad, I come from the Consulate General in Hyderabad, and we cover the Indian states of Telangana, Andhra, and Orissa. But then we also have consulates in Calcutta, Bombay, and Chennai that cover other portions of the country. And of course, the embassy in New Delhi that coordinates all of our work and also covers the North India Consular District. But of all the parts of India, I would argue that where we are today is probably the most promising in terms of the human potential to engage on critical and emerging technologies. Now, my colleague in Chennai might disagree with me. He and I have a small rivalry, because they like to say that in the their southern district, which includes Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, the Pondicherry, they like to say that they're the tech hub of India. But increasingly, Telugu-speaking India is taking its place as the central place in the union for a lot of the critical and emerging technology. Yeah, well, that's really applause for you, not for me. So for us in Hyderabad, it's very gratifying because we have a bird's eye view of what's happening in Andhra Pradesh, also in Telangana, and to some extent also in Orissa even, on raising up the human talent and pairing that with state, in many cases, state government initiatives that foster this innovation. And of course, the central government too. I mean, you cannot discount the contributions by organizations like DRDO that has a big presence in Telugu, India. Anyway, so without further ado, I'm just going to go through briefly, very briefly, what this ISET encompasses, and then hopefully we'll have some time for engagement on questions. So, as mentioned, President Biden and Prime Minister Modi, way back in May 2022, first jointly launched this ISET to elevate and expand our strategic technology partnership and defense industrial cooperation between our two central governments. Many of you may know that Tata has joint ventures with both American companies, Boeing and Lockheed Martin, to produce critical components for military aircraft in Hyderabad, for example. But this is meant to include not just governments. You know, in the history of our relationships, many times great ideas come from the government of the United States or the government of India, specifically the Indian Department of Science and Technology and our government agencies, and then the ideas just sort of die because the governments aren't always the best place to implement the initiative. So this ISET, by design, under Prime Minister Modi and President Biden, is meant to incorporate, in addition to governments, academia, the private sector, and the nonprofit sectors of our two countries. So the two countries affirmed in May 22 that the ways in which technology is designed, developed, governed, and used should be shaped by our shared democratic values. And this is really where this bilateral partnership between India and the United States is somewhat unique. We have two of the world's greatest democracies, two of the world's largest economies, and arguably the world's most populous country. I don't know if officially we've crossed that nadir yet, but soon to be, if not already, the world's largest country in terms of population, partnering with the world's oldest democracy, because we recognize, and this is sort of a premise, that all of this work on critical and emerging technologies, can be used for any number of purposes. So it's in our interest as Indians and as Americans to join forces to ensure that at least on some level, this cooperation, this advancement in critical and emerging technology will take place in the context of our shared democratic values and respect for popular sovereignty and universal human rights. So our two countries committed to fostering an open, accessible, and secure technology ecosystem based on mutual trust and confidence that will reinforce these values and, I should point out, our democratic institutions. So just recently, as mentioned earlier, on January 31st, so what was that, 35 days ago or so, our two sides discussed opportunities for greater cooperation in the critical and emerging technology space, for co-development and co-production, and ways to deepen connectivity across what we're calling innovation ecosystems that include universities like Andhra University here. The two governments noted the value of establishing innovation bridges in certain sectors through things like expos, hackathons, I don't know if you've heard of these, and pitch sessions. And they also invented specifically biotechnology and advanced materials, rare earth processing as areas for future cooperation. So I would say to the students, especially if there are undergraduate students out there thinking about different areas to study, these are going to be growth areas. If you're interested in the technology that underpins a lot of this stuff, rare earth materials are critically important to the production of just about everything. Professor, you probably know much better than I do, but components of electronics manufacturing they're absolutely indispensable. And yet the world as we see it today, both the processing and the raw materials of rare earth elements, sometimes called REEs, are almost exclusively dominated by one country, and it's not India or the United States. The United States and India also underline their commitment to working to resolve issues related to regulatory barriers and business and talent mobility in both countries through a standing mechanism under ISET. So this might sound like bureaucratese, but actually this is very important, because what this does, a standing mechanism under the Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technology, will operationalize a lot of these good ideas into practical outcomes. And then to expand and deepen our tech partnership, the United States and India are also launching new bilateral initiatives and welcoming new cooperation between governments, industry, and academia, signing a new implementation agreement for a research agency partnership between our National Science Foundation in the United States and Indian science agencies to expand international collaboration in a range of areas, including artificial intelligence, quantum technology, and advanced wireless. So I don't know if you've heard this, but we're already talking about 6G. You know, I asked my wife, what happened to 5G? We didn't even roll out 5G, and already they're on 6G. But this is actually real, and Open RAN networks are no longer a thing of science fiction, but this is being operationalized in our lifetimes today. And all of this is in order to build a robust innovation ecosystem between our two countries. So expect to see a lot more exchanges, a lot more funding of research here in India and likewise in the United States. The National Science Foundation, who I just met with in Washington a couple weeks ago, are very excited about a program in which they are sponsoring research, hardcore research in India via partners that they partner with in the United States. So they fund the partners in the United States, the partners in the United States fund the research in India, and they collaborate with their fellow researchers on the other side of the Pacific Ocean. And then finally, a joint Indo-US quantum coordination mechanism will be established with participation from industry, academia, and government to facilitate research and industry collaboration. We will also draw from global efforts to develop common standards and benchmarks for trustworthy artificial intelligence and applied artificial intelligence through coordinating on the development of consensus multi-stakeholder standards, ensuring that these standards and benchmarks are aligned with democratic values. I don't know how many of you are following the drama of the Chat GPT. This one researcher reported that, or actually a journalist reported, he had a conversation with it. It was very disturbing. The artificial intelligence application seemed to have a life of its own and said some very disturbing things. So this is for me, somebody who's kind of nerdy out about this. This is very exciting. Regardless of the quirks or the bugs, this is an area for collaboration where the sky's the limit. There's already applied artificial intelligence happening all over India in industry, commerce, agriculture, educational applications, healthcare, life sciences. And this really is a frontier where the best of the United States and the best of India can come together to create the future, as it were. One thing the United States is very good at is research and development funding. Much of that has its source, if you trace it all the way back, to the public sector, to the government. I don't know how familiar you are with an organization called DARPA. It was the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency that really stumbled across and helped develop what we know today as the internet. And that was a federal government funded by the United States initiative. And likewise, there are some great, including the National Research and Development Corporation of India, the great models on the Indian side for ways we can funnel that. But what we need is a joint commitment more than anything else to pursuing this future together, to collaborate, just like Professor Krishna Mohan pointed out. This is really the key, because all of these great ideas can remain great ideas on paper if nobody, and just stay on paper, if nobody steps up to man the collaboration barricades, as it were. And that's where you come in. As students, especially at venerable institutions like Andhra University, with your, almost like you said, 100-year history, you really have an opportunity. It may not seem obvious in the here and now, but you have an opportunity to shape that future, and we very much want to be along for the ride to shape it with you. So, there's a lot more detail about what we're doing and how we're doing it, but I think maybe we'll just stop there in order to give you an opportunity to raise any questions you may have about, the why or the how of this critical and emerging technology initiative. I will give myself one caveat, one easy out before your questions, and that is, given that it's so recent, this ISET, actually a lot remains to be seen about how exactly it will be operationalized. The good news, as I mentioned, is that both Prime Minister Narendra Modi Garu, I say Garu because we're in Telugu land, Narendra Modi ji and President Biden have committed to this standing mechanism that will implement things, that will implement the initiatives going forward. But it still remains to be seen exactly how that's going to play out in practice. For your perspective, I think there is very much, maybe more than any other generation of Indian students, there is going to be opportunities to collaborate on research and development, educational exchanges, and even to benefit from the growing of our innovation bridge, innovation ecosystem between our two countries. So thank you very much. I'll now turn it back to our organizers to facilitate the discussion.
Thank you so much. So we'll move on to the discussion part. I acknowledge the presence of Dean International Affairs of this university and CEO of our incubation hub, Mr. Ravi Swarup Garu, and the other dignitaries. Over to Purushottam Garu now. You can use these two mics.
What is the audience kitchen? Yeah. How about audience kitchen? Yeah.
Yeah, please help it out.
Thank you, Professor Stephen and Mr. Sen and Professor Krishna Mohan and colleagues from US Consulate Hyderabad and all the participants from faculty and students and other invitees for this very important event which has been hosted under the banner of American Corner, which is led by our Professor Stephen. I think we should compliment Professor Stephen's initiatives and his hard work, for bringing the American Corner. I am wondered and I am rather astonished the way from where he gets that kind of an energy. He is holding a multiple hats in the university administration, but almost the other day I was reading his report. Every month I think at least 3-4 events under the American Corner, either physical or virtual, is conducting and creating the awareness and utilizing the American Embassy and the consulate expertise in creating awareness among the Indian students, particularly from this region, who are willing to go abroad for their higher studies, and is able to establish that kind of a bridges between the Indian students and the American universities. And coming to today's event, really we are grateful to our Honorable Vice Chancellor for organizing, for rather inviting Mr. Sen and his colleagues to American Corner to share their perspectives, particularly as he has mentioned recently at a high level, between the two governments, the Indian government and the American government, a high level bilateral deal has been agreed upon, and it is all our duty to implement, that deal so that India, being a developing country, will get the benefit out of this bilateral deal that is what we call Initiative for Critical and Emerging Technologies, ISET. They named it. It's a wonderful initiative. As he has mentioned, it is a wonderful opportunity for all the youth and the students how to leverage, that kind of a ecosystem being built between these two countries. So it is up to you how you are able to make use of all these government initiatives. But to facilitate this discussion further, I have my own 1 or 2 observations I would like to know from you for the benefit of all the audience here. You mentioned that both India and America are the largest democratic countries, and we share a lot of common challenges in terms of food security, energy security, global internal security, and all these things. And as our Krishna Mohan Garu said, America is always much ahead of the entire world in terms of technologies and technical standards, establishing technical standards. But under these initiatives, what are all the kind of challenges you envisage, so that we can prepare and addressing those challenges and make use of this bilateral collaboration between America and India in realizing the benefits under this initiative on critical and emerging technologies. What are the kind of based on your global experiences, what kind of challenges you envisage so that we can try to address those challenges and make use of these opportunities?
Yes, sir. That's actually a very good question. And maybe put another way is sort of what's the point? You know, what's the real reason behind pursuing these sorts of bilateral agreements, especially on critical and emerging technologies? And you're right. I mean, it's not just because we're friends and we're partners and we want to do things together. It's actually because the administration, President Biden's administration in the United States and Prime Minister Modi's administration in New Delhi both recognize the opportunity that our countries have together to address some of the most pressing global challenges that everybody faces on the planet, not just our countries. Chief among them is climate change. Chief among them is development. Chief among them is renewable energy sources. Chief among them is food insecurity. Chief among them is pandemic preparedness. So, and frankly, chief among them is security. You know, the Indo-Pacific strategy, which is an initiative of the previous U.S. administration, but has been carried over perhaps even more aggressively under the current administration, is very central to this initiative, and that is the recognition that global prosperity and global development and the capacity of the globe to address issues like climate change really depends upon a free and open Indo-Pacific. This region, home to a majority of the planet's population, if you define it broadly, like the Indian Ministry of External Affairs does, you know, this region is the critical region going forward for the globe, for the world, to address all of these challenges. And so if at the very fundamental level we don't have a free and open Indo-Pacific where free and open exchanges of things like tech transfer can take place, then we have a very serious problem. And both the Indian government and my own recognize that, and I think that's paramount. But yeah, the challenges that we face, that our respective peoples face, are the same challenges faced by people all over the world, whether in the developing or developed country. You know, climate change doesn't discriminate between the developed world and the developing world. There are some places, especially like the Maldives, for example, where its effects may be more acute in the near term, but in the long term, all of us face a very serious threat posed by global climate change.
It's a very, very important topic you have touched upon, you know, the climate change. So there is a saying, as a global saying, I would say, if we protect environment, and environment will protect us. So such an important thing. But what is important is, always development comes at a cost in the form of a environmental damage. Always development, if you want development, we need industries. Once we establish industries, obviously they will contribute for the climate change. So what is required at this critical moment is that we need a climate finance, you know, to bring such kind of innovative technologies which can solve this climatic damage and control the pollution control. I would like to know what kind of a measures or what kind of a climate financing initiatives the US government is put in place through institutions like World Bank or other channels, because climate change is very, very important for all of us. So being a big brother, no, what kind of a leadership you are trying to provide to the globe on this climate finance?
Well, given your experience, Professor, I would call myself your little brother on this stage anyway. Yeah. So, but no, you raise a very important and somewhat delicate geopolitical issue. And actually, you do, I think your question does great service to the position of the Indian government with respect to finance mechanisms for mitigation and adaptation to global climate change. And this was a topic, as you know, at the recent COP Conference of Parties, and will be again at the coming one. It's also a topic amongst the G20 hosted this year, just for this year, by India, very proudly, without seeing a big G20 poster, the Prime Minister's smiling face. And so in many ways, this is very much India's moment. And I think your question actually accurately captures the position of the government of India vis-a-vis climate change and the responsibility of the developed world vis-a-vis the developing world about financing measures to mitigate and adapt. What I will say is the United States has contributed, by one metric more than any other country on the planet in terms of capitalization for multilateral financial institutions like the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank. Our own development finance corpus will continue. But what I cannot do is give you a number, in terms of financial vehicles. And the truth is we don't know what that number is. And it's a different context in every different place. So, for example, I've made a number of trips to ERISA with our lead ERISA specialist and ODIA speaker, Siba Tripathi, to look at some of the really innovative initiatives by the state government there to adapt local environments, local ecosystems to the ravages of climate change. And so, that can be a model for many places. And it may be that under partnerships like our own between India and the United States, we can serve as leverage, as a facilitating factor to help spread that message of how, the government of ERISA and more broadly, the Union government of India addresses climate change on a local, regional, state, municipal level. But yeah, you raise a good point. There is a cost associated with these lofty initiatives, and it remains to be seen exactly how that cost will be borne and by whom.
Thank you very much for your very elaborate answer. One more thought came to my mind is on the digitization. Now India has adopted the digitization in a mass scale. Of course, US has already achieved digitization in almost all spheres of your activity. And more so, the government of India and the government of Andhra Pradesh is investing huge amounts in digitizing the education sector. So what are the lessons we can learn from you, or the takeaways based on your experience in digitizing all your economic activities in your country? So what are the best lessons we can learn from you in this regard?
Well, that's an even better question, but I'm afraid I have an even less satisfying answer than the last one. Actually, what I would say is, because I'm not an expert on digitization, especially in the educational field, but we have lots of people who are. And actually, that's one of the goals of this new Critical and Emerging Technologies Partnership, is that we would pair up experts like yourself with experts in U.S. Education field that have embarked on digitization more broadly. We did do a lot of work on digitization in certain areas of public health early on. The United States has a strong track record there. But what I would say to this audience especially is, India is in many ways a world leader with respect to digitization of especially the financial system, right? And this UPI platform is a model for many across the world, not just in the developing world. So I'm not so sure that's as one way a street in terms of digitization as some of the other research and development focused areas of critical and emerging technologies. And I think, frankly, we can learn a lot from the Indian experience, especially under the current government. I think they deserve a lot of credit for what they've done and to integrate so many more massive percentages more into the out of the gray economy into the open and public economy. And frankly, the advances in social protection that resulted from more accurate data, which is ultimately what came about. So, yeah, I don't. The short answer is I don't know what the best lessons learned we could share from the United States in terms of digitization of the education sector are. But I definitely can put you in touch with those people who do. And I would, more than anything, as an Indian, look to the experience that you've already had from both the central and state governments, including the government of Andhra Pradesh, who I think also deserves quite a lot of credit in the field of education more broadly. I can't think of a better state to be in if I were a young, up-and-coming Indian student, to be better prepared for the global economy after graduating from English medium government schools, for example. So I think there's a lot of lessons learned, not just in digitization, but in education, social policy more broadly, that goes both ways. Because, you know, we, like you, we're a federal system. And so education policy is largely the domain of the states. Whereas you have the National Education the NEP, we don't really have the same thing in the United States. It's really almost purely the domain of the individual 50 states and territories. And they have very different models. The good thing about that different model approach is that you can take lessons learned from other states and apply them, you know, cross-apply them rather easily. But the bad thing is it's harder to explain what is the American education model, because in many ways there are many.
Thank you for your very elaborate answer. One more comment, or rather an appreciation. You know, America is a land of opportunities, you know, and because of the democracy or the kind of strategic policies you pursue. So our Indian diaspora or the Indo-Americans, they have been given a lot of opportunities, even to be part of the government, part of the corporates, even part of the political system. You know, our Indians now are trying to contest for the presidency in US. This is a great.
Well, we call them Americans, but yes. Right.
So it is a great opportunity for people who have got talent. You know, Indian origin. Yeah. So to fill that pipeline, you know, of leadership, what kind of initiatives the consulate or the Indian Embassy of America is putting in place, so that the youth, we need to motivate them for going for higher education and to explore all these opportunities which are being made available to the talented people across the globe in America. Am I clear?
Yeah. No, I think that's a great question. And again, I would point here to the uniqueness of the Telugu experience in the United States. You know, one of the great things about serving at the Consulate General in Hyderabad is you learn very quickly that India is a very, very, very diverse country. The Honorable Minister KTR in Telangana likes to say, you know, you go 200 kilometers in India and the languages, you know, it's not like different dialects of the same language. They're as different as Russian is from French. Completely different culture, completely different everything. And so in the Telugu experience, you know, we do see, and actually, according to some reports, Telugu is the fastest growing language in the United States, which is really remarkable if you think about it. Yeah, so you know, from our perspective, selfishly, we think that's wonderful, and we'll take all the best and the brightest. But I think what we're seeing increasingly is more flows both ways. And one thing that the Consul General Larson is very particular to her, she would like to see more American students study in places like Andhra University. We have a big, you know, many, and frankly all over India, but. You know, given the really high quality faculty, other students, which is where much of the learning comes from, motivated, very bright students, highly educated workforce, and increasing opportunities in English, frankly, in places like Andhra Pradesh, thanks to this education policy. There really are great opportunities. In fact, I worked with a fellow diplomat in Hyderabad who went to MIT for his undergraduate degree. And he spent 1 year in Hyderabad. So was he at Triple IT? Do you remember where Marcel was? Or no. But he was studying affiliated with one of the research institutions. He was also working like a work-study program. I think maybe ISB. Yeah. So anyway, I think this is growing actually, and you know, we understand the attraction of U.S. universities, and sure, we welcome everybody to come. And many Telugu students have come, they've stayed, contributed, and Indian Americans more broadly, obviously we're very proud of their achievements in the realms of not just the private sector, but also government and politics, public service. So you know, the United States is a bit unique in that sense. We are not so much like you, an ancient civilizational culture. I think India can proudly lay claim, one of the few nations left on the world, nation states that can lay claim to a proud ancient civilizational culture underpinning the current nation state. The United States is a much younger nation in that sense, and we are a nation of immigrants, all of us, except for the Native Americans and African Americans who were brought against their will to the United States. Everybody else were immigrants of some sort. You know, you just have to go back far enough and you find them. So yeah, we love the fact that especially for diversifying our cuisine, I'll tell you, we love the fact that we have such a contribution diaspora, and I would argue it's also one of the reasons that bilateral initiatives like this happen, because there is such a strong and growing people-to-people ties between our two countries that we cannot help but focus on how together we can face the global challenges we enumerated before.
Thank you. I think this is my last question, because I would also like to give opportunity to all the youngsters. So as a IPR chair professor, I have some concerns and some issues with regard to US. So I would like to seek your opinion, or rather your observations on this. You know, you have this USTR's annual 301 report. You are aware of that?
Yes.
So US puts India is also one of the country in that USTR 301 annual report. What it means is, if your name appears, if your country name appears in the USTR annual 301 report, means you do not respect the IP and we don't transfer the innovative technologies. And I feel it is becoming a hurdle or a challenge for the MNCs to come to India with the innovative technologies, because USTR is putting India in the annual 301 list. Every year USTR announces the countries' names in that USTR 301 report. That means those countries, they do not respect intellectual property rights. You be cautious or careful when you do or deal with such countries. Along with China, they also put India in that. It is really a painful issue for all of us here. India has got a very strong IPR regime, and year after year we are strengthening, and we are totally compliant with the TRIPS agreement. So, possibility of violating the IP laws or IP rules. But this is what, when being an IPR expert or IPR fraternity, I have been hearing from many of my colleagues in this domain. So how do we overcome by mentioning India's name in the USTR's annual 30 report? What is your advice to us so that we will be out of that list? Am I clear to you?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I will be very brief in order to give time for everybody else. This is an easy one for me to answer, and please forgive me, Honorable Professor, for giving a non-satisfying answer that I'm about to give. But there are active negotiations between the United States Trade Representative and the government of India vis-a-vis certain actions that we believe should be taken in order to protect intellectual property that have not yet been taken and in fact have not even been proposed. So unfortunately, because those active negotiations are going on, I cannot comment on at all, and frankly I'm not an expert anyway, but it is true, and I thank you for the question, because it's good to ask controversial questions. This should be a lesson for everybody. Don't ever let a speaker come and just get easy questions. Oh, great, thank you so much. Yeah, we're so happy. You should always ask hard-hitting questions. Otherwise, what's the point of the speaker coming? You can read about it on in TV or something, or watch it on TV. But yeah, I cannot comment at all on these negotiations. What I can say more generally is the United States Trade Representative, the office of the USTR, has a long and proud history of enforcing free and fair trade rules between the United States and its partners. And I would also say that despite our close partnership, even it's now a strategic partnership between the United States and India, there are times we disagree. And I would say that's a healthy thing in any relationship. I don't know how many of you are married. I'm married. And I can tell you, no two people ever agree on anything. And it's the same thing in a relationship between countries. So there are challenges. This is not a challenge-free or a perfect world. And our two countries don't always agree on everything. but there's way more space where we do agree and where we have a potential to collaborate than there are challenges. And so I would like to leave you with the positive side, which is, yes, you've correctly identified challenges to the Indian legal IPR regime that has been identified by the United States Trade Representative, but those are not challenges that cannot be overcome. To put it more clearly, I should say, those are challenges that can be overcome. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your very frank, candid answers. Many times diplomats means they are very diplomatic. They don't give the correct and direct answer. But we could see you are very fair, honest, and you are able to give your best answers to satisfy most of your stakeholders and audience. Now the floor is open. I allow maybe 3 to 4 questions because the time what we have is very limited. So please quickly announce your name and the question should be very brief. Okay? Yeah. 3 to 4 questions maximum. Yeah.
I will send the mic to you. Thank you.
You have to answer. Okay.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Kalyan Kumar, working as lecturer. My question was, thank you, sir, for clearly explaining the partnership between America and India regarding the emerging technologies. My question is, India is largely based on agrarian economy. So, as being a son of my father was a farmer, so we know the difficulty of the farming. So if there are any specific plans that is devised by both these governments, how to use these emerging technologies in the field of agriculture, so that it really benefit both the economies of both the countries. That's my question.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think it's a great question because it shines a light on what many American tech people don't really understand, because the India we see when they come to visit, they go to this beautiful GMR airport in Hyderabad, and you're going to have a new GMR airport here in Vizag. It's amazing. It's actually better infrastructure than we have in the United States. And so, they're blown away, like, my goodness, what's going on? And they forget the fact that almost 60% of India is still rural based. Now, those can be villages of 50,000 people, right? But still, it's considered rural. And so the challenge of developing an economy like India is very different than, Taiwan or Eastern China, or even the development model China's looking at today, when, much of the rural population has migrated now in the 1990s to the Eastern zone, the industrial zone. So yeah, and actually I do have one example. I don't know how relevant this is to your case specifically, but you're absolutely right that the government of India and the United States are focused like a laser beam, among other areas, on applied artificial intelligence and other technologies for the agricultural sector. And for that reason, the United States government, we have an attaché from our Department of Agriculture. It's called the Foreign Agricultural Service Attaché. He's a minister counselor at Embassy New Delhi, Ron Verdonk, long-serving, excellent, brilliant interlocutor, and has regular, almost daily interactions with the central and state governments on agricultural policy issues. But the one example I was going to cite as sort of maybe a harbinger of things to come is an applied artificial intelligence program that a dairy farm uses, where they have drones that can actually that film, the cows, and so they know, based on the movement of the cows, the computer program knows which cows are sick, which cows need to be watered, which cows need to be culled from the herd, which cows are about to give birth, based on their movements around as just little blips on the screen. And it's actually a fairly low-tech application, but it can be projected to save 20-30% of costs for the agricultural farmer. And given the rapid increase in applicability of drone technology, and as the technology advances, the price goes down. And so these are applications that really can be used by local farmers for relatively cheap, perhaps with some state subsidy, perhaps not. That can reduce costs anywhere from, like I said, 20 to 30% for a dairy farmer. So, I think that's one small example, and the applicability to crops is even broader in many ways. and water management, which is a huge issue, as you know, in India. Less so here in Andhra. You've got all kinds of great, this is some of the most fertile land in the country. But in other parts of the country, it's not the case. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And in fact, there's a lot of work going on in that space specifically.
Thank you. Yeah, announce your name. And
My name is Jayapratap, sir. I'm emerging. I'm an entrepreneur. My question is just extending the previous question, that we are in this industrial revolution of 5.0, where Chat GPT and all this AI, you just mentioned, are taking over human this thing. So how would the human capital of India would be useful to counter or make it to the next level of this industrial revolution in US, and also the technologies of US can be useful to enhance or solve the Indian domestic problems. Is my point.
Yeah, I think I would take that question in a slightly different direction, and that's as follows. If you look at different development models around the world, there, at least in the West, there's a fairly predictable pattern, right? And now some people are saying we're in the fifth industrial revolution. What I've heard recently from some Indian policymakers who I won't name is that this is great, it's exciting, applied AI is wonderful, entrepreneurs are great, but we shouldn't forget manufacturing. Given India's current trade deficit with China, for example, and balance of trade, there's a huge space in addition to that were once done overseas and imported into India. And I think globally we're entering an era of geostrategic competition where that is an ever-present concern. We all seen, from COVID, what happened to global supply chains for manufactured goods. And I would argue that, prototyping for manufactured goods is, with a massive rural population, for example, can do at the same time that it, launches this fifth industrial revolution. And that's actually something, like I said, some policymakers at the central level, but the state of Telangana is very focused on, for example, with their new launch of this T-Works. So the T-Hub was the Innovation Incubation Entrepreneur Incubator. T-Works is meant to be the prototyping place for physically manufactured stuff, mostly. That's where the Skyroot engineers built their 3D rocket engine on a 3D printer. So yeah, I mean, I think India has, if you were looking to create a country in a fictional world that has all the tools ready to take advantage of both that, global supply chain meltdown that happened in COVID, take advantage of the opportunities presented by that, at the same time as taking advantage of the opportunities in critical and emerging technologies and marrying the two, India is like the perfect case study.
Yeah. Anyone from this side? Yeah, Ravi. Yeah, Ravi.
Yeah.
Ravi, you introduce yourself is better. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Mr. Sina. I'm Ravi Ishwarapu. I'm CEO of the Incubation Hub at Andhra University. My question to you, sir, I think it's a combination of both. The flow of things, if you say between US and India, money flows, commerce flows, products, services, even people. But when it comes to technology, you always have to piggyback whether it's the government is involved or it's a big national, a big company that's involved, where there's some trust factor that has to be there when the technology flows. But in the forefront of innovation is all these startups. And two, when you're talking about the agri stuff, the challenges that we have seen when we recent visit to the US, the mechanization or the use of technology is because is slightly easier and the cost of labor is higher in the US. So applicability of technology is at a different scale in the US compared to what when you talk about India, because the land holdings are smaller, the affordability is low, the yield as well as the rupees that you generate per acre are pretty low, and use of technology. So the customization of the technology which is developed in the US, while India is a large market, it's a very price sensitive market. The understanding that you're talking of when they come to India and understanding what actually the local market needs is different. The same is the case when we try to sell something to the US as a product or as a thing that is developed in India. So it's not so easy to identify. Is there any, as an ISET, any platform that's being created so startups can talk to each other and help each other in customizing to the local markets and being able to sell these technologies out?
Yeah. That's a great question, and tech transfer is very much on the minds of your policymakers, as I'm sure you know. But yeah, under strengthening the innovation ecosystem, part of that is to promote collaboration in certain key areas, specifically for tech transfer, and marrying up entrepreneurs with each other. So, you know, organizations like your own are really in a sweet spot to take advantage of these initiatives. And I would encourage you to pass up ideas. You know, a lot of this is being coordinated on the Indian side through the Department of Science and Technology. But innovation hubs like your own, affiliated with state universities, you know, you have an opportunity to influence the position of the Indian government on their side of the ISET. And I would strongly encourage you to pass up ideas you have for how to create mechanisms or increase that flow between entrepreneurs. But specifically in ISET, there is a number of vehicles that could be used for entrepreneurs, for example, to come visit, go visit each other, work on things jointly. The National Science Foundation, as I mentioned earlier, is funding U.S. researchers and developments who are also funding their Indian partners, working on the same problem sets in both countries simultaneously. So these sorts of flows are the future. I mean, there's at least, I don't know, but I can think of 6 different sort of sub-initiatives and programs that are fostering exactly that. So the question for us, you know, here on the ground is, how do we get in? How do we fit in? And my suggestion to you, sir, and to innovation leaders like yourself would be to present those ideas as much as possible, maybe through the state government in your case, because it's under you know, up to the Indian Department of Science and Technology, because they're actively soliciting ideas not just from corporates, but from entrepreneurs, from innovation hubs like your own. But you're right. I mean, what you touched on, that collaboration and connectivity between the individual entrepreneurs, that's absolutely a feature of several parts of the Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technologies.
Thank you. Mr. Manjeer?
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Dr. Varalakshmi, and I have 2 simple questions to you. One as a researcher and another one as a parent. The first one is the wait time in the consulate regarding the interviews.
Oh, visas.
Visa interviews. Is there? You said that most of the people that come to you are Telugu speaking, and we have a consulate in one in Hyderabad. Is there any way possible to get the visa consulate office in Andhra Pradesh as part of your US Tech India collaboration? That is one question, sir. And the second question is with regard to the ESOL. English for speakers of other languages. This is a very good program that you have, and we happen to enjoy that during our stay in Florida. I'd like to know what kind of assistive technology is prevalent or in on papers that you are going to give to our aspiring students who would be coming on the F1 visa.
You mean to train them in English?
Yes, sir.
Well, actually, one of the requirements of the F1 visa is that they're already proficient in English. Yeah.
Yes, they will be proficient. They need to pass 2 important examinations, GRE, GMAT, TOEFL, or the other ones. But when it comes to speaking, it would be very difficult. So as a parent, my concern would be if there are any programs like what we have in ESOL, ESOL in Florida, English for speakers of other languages.
But is that in? But that's for like primary and secondary school students, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Is there any way, like, is there any
for university
for
level?
university students as part of assistive technologies that you have in place as part of US India Tech collaboration?
That's a great idea, and my answer is I don't know. I will check on it though, Professor, and get back to you, and even suggest maybe this is an area we should explore. I'm not the decision maker for that or really anything. Just ask my wife. but I will definitely pass up that idea. I think it's a great one because you're right. You know, in many cases, you can pass the TEFL and say you're proficient in English or written English, really, and then you get there and it's harder.
Yes.
But
The way we speak, like here, Sean, S-E-A-N is Sean.
yeah, but you
we
know that's
call
not
that
English. That's actually Irish.
Irish.
You
Yes,
know,
sir.
you know what that is? That's the Irish word for John. So actually, it means it means John. In English, it's John. But my mother gave me an Irish name. I don't know why.
Yeah, this kind of dialects,
Yeah.
information
Yeah,
given
yeah.
as part of
That's a great
assistive
idea. Assistive technology. Yeah. But I want to say 40% of all the student visas last year. So that's the F1. 40% of all Indian F1 applications came from Telugu states. Just Andhra and Telangana. So actually the United States government is responding, and we have just opened and will soon occupy, I think next week, right guys? A brand new massive consulate general in Hyderabad. So we're shifting from the current Paiga Palace, where it has 9 visa windows, to a new one that has 54 visa windows. So, yeah. Yeah. So I'm not authorized to make any promises or even speculate about that. I can tell you from a personal level, just as a diplomat who has to move around all the time, I would love to be stationed in Visakhapatnam. but you know, the city of destiny is beautiful. You have a coastline, very nice. But no, I do not know of any plans to open up a branch office in Andhra Pradesh. The consulate general in Hyderabad covers Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, and Orissa. Yeah.
Actually, this space is near to Odisha too.
Oh, here. Yeah.
So you can forward a word from there.
Well, I think you overestimate my importance, Professor. I am just a guy doing a job. But yeah, I welcome and thank you very much for the question. I think, you know, the influence of this part of India on the bilateral strategic partnership really cannot be overestimated. It's very, very important. What's happening here, the innovation centers in Andhra Pradesh, progressive state governments like that of the current government in Andhra Pradesh, the current government in Telangana, really, I think, have created an environment where not just American investors, but also American NGOs, American tourists, American educators, really find a welcome that you know, they might not in other parts of the world. But you know, from our perspective, the dynamism of Telugu India is such that we feel privileged, really, to be stationed here at this time in the history of our relationship.
Yeah, one more. Last question.
Namaste, sir. I am Mallikarjuna, a teacher in electrical engineering department. Straight away, I just wanted to put direct technological points where we need your intervention in establishing the direct connect between the working people here and the working people there. So there are 3-4 fields in which we are working. So we are exploring to establish the direct connect there. One is development of high-speed motors. So 10 years back, many of the companies in US and many of the companies are users in India also. We used to get the motors from Germany. So now the technology has been developed in such a way that we are on par with German technology in developing permanent magnet motors. So the users in US, they may have an established connection if with our team or with Andhra University as a whole. We can contribute a lot to that. That is one point. And development of the low Earth orbit satellite vehicles. So where we can give our learning models and our simulating models to you in making the low Earth orbit vehicle a high efficient and with enhanced endurance, like that. So we can develop with the guidance of your space agencies or so a controllers that may have high efficiency and low power consumption capabilities and all.
Mm-hmm.
And the third one which I would like to put before you is the Hyperloop.
Mm.
So if it has been the same technology is replicated in India, I can have my house here and I can work at Hyderabad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I can morning I can go to my workplace at Hyderabad and come back to Vizag.
That's
So
actually
that-
really
that is
good to
one.
note down those three. Yeah, sorry. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
So Hyperloop, it's under a testing phase in US by Virgin, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So if there is any direct connect between the team at Andhra University and the team working there, so we can put ourselves in learning the things at a
Right.
faster rate.
Yeah.
That's
Well-
what I would like to submit to you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think those three areas of collaboration, I should say there is work being done in all three already. But B, connecting you here in Andhra University with counterparts in the United States, especially in academia, who, in our system, much of the R&D that takes place happens in the academic context. That's absolutely something that we can look to help you with, namely get the right names to the right people of who you can contact. We will do. And I should also point out, because I didn't touch it in the talk, and I'm sorry, but there is a lot going on in commercial space right now. So not only manned space flight, which is also between NASA and ISRO collaboration happening, but on the commercialization.
Name of Skyroot.
Yeah.
So
You
we
know those
have-
guys?
Yeah, we have started discussion with them.
Oh, good.
In
Okay.
few areas.
Yeah. Tell them I said hi.
Thank you.
They're very impressive. Very impressive. That was, yeah.
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 Thank you, sir.
No, thank you. Okay.
Good evening, sir. This is Srinivas Rao. I work with Dean, sir. I'm an Associate Dean of International Affairs. And you have been collaborating for the last 25 years very well. And we have only a group of people who are participating in your studies, which means who are able to invest and who are able to study abroad. But we have students who are really smart and who are not able to come to US and study. If you have a possibility for them to come there and work, they can do really miracles. This is one. And the thing is, it's only a suggestion from my side. I don't know how you can take it to US or see. The thing is, you have been mentioning that you are collaborating with us, you will be giving funds for research, but instead it would be a very great idea if you adopt some universities in India. Like, there are universities where you have a lot of skill among the students, and the fund distribution, and we are something like in a situation where the fund distribution is not proper in this particular scenario. So it would be really nice, instead of collaborating and giving some money for only a set of people, where it's like a give and take situation, it would be a very nice idea if you adopt the university apart and support the technology and the students, and those people who are going from here who are really having smart brains, and those people who cannot afford to go there. And if you give them a lot of support to them, like free education, or sponsor them in such a way they study there and utilize their brains there, would be a very good situation globally as well as for US and India. That's what I feel so.
Yeah. That, you touch on a lot of really important themes that sort of define the relationship. And you're right. We recognize that even though we've had students come to the United States on F1 visas and then maybe stay on an H1 work visa and then, become an American citizen and contribute to our society, we also recognize, it's very expensive. And it's even more expensive in many cases for people coming from abroad, because they cannot take advantage of the lower rates for U.S. citizens of state universities, for example, or residents anyway. So, one thing, also very recent, a development in the education space more broadly, tertiary education space, is, the Indian government recently relaxed its rules about foreign universities setting up shop in India. And so a number of U.S. universities, as you know maybe, have explored this idea of setting up branch campuses in foreign countries. There are a number in the Gulf right now, And I think that there may be in the future others in India. Now that will depend on a lot, including the Indian government's willingness to allow funding mechanism between the branches in India and the branches of the United States. But yeah, we completely agree that the expense required for the average student to go to the United States and study is very, very high. And you have to understand, in our model, even the state universities, none are under control of the federal government. None, our central government. And even the state universities are largely independent of the state governments. They're academic institutions with their own boards. They do whatever they want, usually. So it's not something that we can fiat from the public sector, from the government side. We can't say, lower your rates. It really, literally cannot be done according to our law. And the inflation of the price that U.S. students pay too. I mean, I've got 4 kids. If we're talking about paying for their university education, I don't know what we're going to do. So it's a very real problem, and we recognize it. But what I don't have any solution. But what I can say is that under initiatives like that on critical and emerging technologies, what you'll see is a lot more collaboration, and that will include financial mechanisms to fund the R&D, not just in the United States, requiring Indian students to go there, but in India. And so I think opportunities for Indian students, these big brains that you mentioned, the smart brains, will be increased as a direct result of our 2 governments coming together to collaborate on the Critical and Emerging Technologies Initiative.
Thank you, my dear
Sir, my
friends.
last
And
question, sir.
Yeah, last question.
Yeah, sir, my name is Sam Kumar. I would like to ask one personal question, sir. As this technology is growing, these cyber criminals are also growing, sir. So FBI, they are very smart people in USA, so they have a lot more, technology, how to, protect these cyber crimes and all these things. Why can't you people train our Indian police or...
Well, I would first say that I have been blown away by the professionalism, really impressed by the professionalism of the IPS officers that I've met here in India. And I don't know if but in 2019, National Security Director for Cyber, General Pant, what's his official title? National Security Cyber Director or something? National Cyber Security Director? Yeah, please forgive me. But General Pant opened the National Cybersecurity Center of Excellence in Hyderabad, the capital, of Telangana. And so there is actually, some cooperation between our law enforcement agencies, but, that can become more sensitive. And so I think for the government of India, they want to be careful how we do that kind of collaboration. But I will say India has done a lot of work on, there's some, if you want to do some research, you can look into some of these Chinese loan app scams where they were loaned on their mobile phone. Some guy was taking out lakhs of rupees and then killing themselves because that's how it came to light, tragically, because they couldn't pay the high interest. And so the government of the Indian Police Service, really, the IPS, but also the state police forces in Telangana launched major initiatives. Also in Andhra Pradesh, there have been serious investments in cyber crime. But that's really a growth area. We talk about cyber kind of in a broad way, but cybersecurity is a pillar of that. There's also industry and academic-led operations happening all over India, but in Hyderabad, I know about this Zaki Qureshi, what's that called? The security cluster, the Hyderabad security cluster, modeled after a security cluster in the Hague in the Netherlands, that essentially amalgamates data of attempted breaches in the cyber domain, and it's a vital tool for law enforcement to look at to see where to go. But goodness, that's precisely one of the areas trying to be addressed by this hackathon, which I mentioned, where students from India and the United States work together to try to outsmart cyber criminals. Or really, they pretend like they're little cyber criminals to see and to give an idea to policymakers where the cyber criminals will strike next. But cyber in general and cybersecurity particularly is one of the main growth areas targeted under the Initiative for Critical and Emerging Technologies.
Thank you.
Yeah.
An agreement between India and US, and this is the opportunity for young people to make use of it and you should remember this event. And US consulate is open to all of you. You know, you can reach out to him. He has become more indigenized person now. He has already visited Vizag 10, 12 times. Unless he falls in love with Vizag, he cannot visit, you know. So he has visited and he has got a special love for all of you. Make use of this opportunity. Anything related to US culture, education, or anything related to US, you can reach out to him or his colleagues and get all the relevant information. And you should land into the land of opportunities and bring name, fame for our country and leverage the collaborative agreement between the Indian and US government. The message what he has given is that, you know, through this his talk is that connect yourself, collaborate and co-create. So these are the messages what he has given through his talk. And on behalf of Andhra University, I would also, on my own behalf, I personally thank Seen and his colleagues for choosing this topic and coming all the way to address all of us. I think, Professor. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Sean Ruthe, and it's a privilege to have you. So, exactly. I didn't give mic to my registrar. Otherwise, I know there are a lot of questions. We wish you come back. Okay, we'll have one more session like this. Yeah. So now we will close the session with a small felicitation to our guest. So I request the two dignitaries here to honor with the shawl and the flower bouquet, Purushottam Garu.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, but are you sure there's TRS colors? TRS.
Yeah. Right. Thank you very much. And let me present the Chronicles of American Corner, the 1 year activities.
Oh, yeah.
To you.
I was here on that trip. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I should say, you know, my thanks to you, Dr. Krishna Mohan Garu, Professor, Stephen Garu, Professor Garu.
Yeah, we enjoyed all your Garus.
I'm actually shifting to our embassy in New Delhi this summer. So I'll be replaced by a much smarter and more articulate guy who will come this summer. But Siba and Srimali will be here. So I mean it. I want to echo the comments of your leadership here. We're at your disposal, especially students and researchers. We would love to hear from you, and we'd love to see you if you come through Hyderabad or next time we come to Vizag. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah. This is for you, sir. This is a National Geographic book. Professor Stevens.
To me?
Yeah, of course, yeah. This is actually a little heavy, sorry. Yeah.